Welcome to the Sharp Angles podcast. Rich and I are back for another season of fantasy football fun. This week, we will discuss Bijan Robinson's outlook, talk about a great matchup between the Ravens and Bills, and a whole lot more. So stick around. What's up, everyone? We're back. This is a Sharp Angles podcast, the Thursday edition of the Sharp Angles podcast, which means we're talking about fantasy football. And if we're talking about fantasy football and it's sharp football analysis, there's only one person to do that with, and that is the one, the only Mr. Rich Rebar. How are you doing, Rich?
We're doing good. You know, it's week one. We're kicking off a new season. For us, like from like a working perspective, it doesn't quite feel real yet. Week two is always when you start to get on the conveyor belt because you get to work ahead a little bit for week one. We kind of ease into things too, where there were no Sunday games. We get to just ease in on a Thursday game, a Friday game, and then we get to enjoy kind of that first full Sunday. But then Monday is like I said, you start the conveyor belt process of analyzing what just happened, starting to prep all the work for the next week, and then you get a quick game on Thursday, and like you got to turn all that stuff around. So it still doesn't feel quite real yet, but it is fun that it's back, and we're going to have a game tonight that's going to count. We're going to have stats that count. We're going to have fantasy points scored, at least by one team, hopefully two. But hey, we'll take what we can get to start off the season.
Yeah, that dream, I assume everybody and not just I have this dream. In fact, if I'm the only one that has this dream, I'll be finding something out about myself. But like that dream that you just like, you show up into class and completely forgot that it was the final. Like I have this one that like I show up to class for the first time and there's a final. That's how I felt this morning when I woke up, because I felt like I should have so much more to do. But you're right. Like that's the beauty of week one is we've been preparing for this for 6 months, right? Like we've been preparing for this. We know we think we know what we're getting into, but that's also the beauty of week one is that we're going to get hit with so many surprises, and we're going to have to change what we think. We're going to have to decide if something is real or not. We're going to have to decide if Isaiah Likely breaking out week one last week or last year, if that was real or if it wasn't. And we have to decide what to do with our fab dollars and where to spend our money. By the way, check out my waiver wire article next week. We'll get really going next week with the waiver wire article. So we got all of these things to decide. So it's so funny that we spent 6 months making all of these opinions, like developing everything we think we know, all for some of them to get confirmed, but some of them to just get thrown by the wayside in one, weekend of games. And that's what's really fun about the NFL.
Which is honestly the better part of it. It's not necessarily the guys that have the spike weeks, because I've all played fantasy long enough to kind of see through some of that stuff. It's the guys that struggle in week one, right? And how much panic gets induced on gamers, because there is going to be a lot of guys. I think like when you even look at like all the rookie running backs, like all the rookie running backs have pretty tough spots this weekend, and there's a lot of excitement for this running back class, and a lot of these guys are drafted in the top 5 rounds, and it might be a little slower start for these guys. Just to say, we're going to talk about maybe a player that was drafted 1 overall that might have a slow start. I think those are the more interesting outcomes, right? Like the guys that might struggle a little bit that we had high expectations for. Listen, I was someone else one of the guys I was high on was Ricky Pearsall. And when I wrote up that game, like I was not very high on Ricky Pearsall's outcome in week one. So it's going to be fun to look at some of these guys that came up with like really high aspirations and how many people are like, oh, everyone was just wrong, and throw it out the window.
Well, first of all, I'm no one. I have no leg to stand on about pronouncing names, but Pearsall, not Pearsall. Like how are we saying his last name?
I mean, isn't that not what I said?
Pearsall?
Ricky Pearsall?
Pearsall? I don't know. I don't know how to say it. I definitely could not stand. I have lots of theories about how names. I'm still convinced his name is Isaiah Pacheco and not Isaiah Pacheco. I'm standing
hard.
Good old beat hard. Who signed to a
back.
Practice squad.
He's back.
Yeah, he signed to a practice squad. Good job, CJ. We're rooting for you. The other part about it, you mentioned with like people freaking out about slow starts. I love that even though we're here in week one, we're still getting the preseason like depth chart discourse, because the unofficial depth charts come out and like Bill Krosky Emeritus 4th, and people are losing their mind. When Jim Harbaugh said that Najee Harris is going to start on Friday, right, over Marion Hampton, like just all this stuff, the fact that we get all of this still in week one, we can't leave this offseason discourse behind. And the reason we can't leave it behind is because we love it. Secretly, deep down, we love all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean we know that even the NFL teams don't even set these, right? Like it's already
Yeah,
been kind
exactly.
of like proven that like it's just set by like a media member. And
One time they asked Sean Payton about it, and he like didn't know that it happened every week. Like when he was in New Orleans, I think they like, what about this unofficial? He goes, we put out what every like what are we talking about? I didn't know that we did this. So yeah, it's funny.
and even the stuff like when we get into the Friday game, because there's like that report like Najee Harris might start now, even though Harbaugh never said those words. But even if he takes the first snap, that doesn't mean that like he's gonna have 80% of the backfield touches either. Just things that just drive gamers crazy this time of the year.
But I do want to make one thing very clear. Remember, if the week one depth chart disagrees with what you think in your priors, it's communist propaganda and you don't need to pay attention to it. Always make sure that you remember that. But if it agrees with you, if it agrees with your priors, then it's ripped straight from the mouth of God, and you should take that as gospel. Those are the important things for all fantasy gamers to remember. That is your right as a fantasy gamer. So have fun with that. Speaking of fantasy, everything you need to get ready for week one of the fantasy season is available at sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can also find it at sharp.football, Rich's worksheets, all of that stuff over there. Make sure you go and check it out. The worksheet is a preview of every fantasy relevant player in every single game, every single week of the NFL season. And that is available to our Sharp Football subscribers, along with fantasy rankings and DFS picks and all of that. So make sure you go and check it out. Right now, you can take 25% off any full season or monthly package with code TAKE25 at sharp.football. Want to just try out for 1 week? Just see what Rich has to offer. Go and read his preview. If you're catching this before the Thursday game, record this on Thursday morning, catch this before the Thursday game, go check out his preview of the Eagles and Cowboys. See what he has to say about the Chiefs and the Chargers. Go and check all that out. If you want to do it just 1 week, you can get 77% off our weekly package with code WEEK1. That's one spelled out, O-N-E, week one. Just search sharp.football. Use either the code TAKE25 for season or monthly, or week one to see everything we have to offer. All right. We're going to start off this year with a game of agree or disagree. It's a very, very simple game. I will throw out a prompt, and Rich will either have to agree or disagree, or more likely, if we're being honest, wriggle his way out of answering, sit on the fence, not have an actual answer to my questions. But I'm going to try to hold you down. I'm going to try to hold you down here.
I'll definitely do that.
No, I know that's 100% where we're headed, but it's fine. It's okay. And so first up for week one, when I agree or disagree, is that Bijan Robinson will disappoint those who drafted him at the top of fantasy drafts this summer.
All right, I'll at least try to play the game with you and say, in context of this game, I agree.
Now, look at you.
Obviously, Bijan Robinson has the potential workload and receiving ability to still produce a usable line. If even if he's inefficient, he can get a touchdown, and maybe that's enough to kind of get you through. But this would be a spot I'd operate with a lot of trepidation that it is a spike ceiling, kind of like one of those he'll win you the week type of weeks. Just in general, where the state of the Atlanta Falcons are trying to calibrate these offensive line. Well, Drew Dahlman leaving in free agency, and then Caleb McGarry's injury in the 11th hour of the preseason. And not just Caleb McGarry, but their swing tackle, Storm Norton, is also going to miss the opening 8 weeks of the season as well. Trying to work around those two injuries against an aggressive Todd Bowles defense, because the Bucs don't have a great individual pass rusher. So what they do is they try to manufacture a pass rush, and that's why they blitz at the second highest rate in the NFL. We know Todd Bowles, that's what he does. And when Michael Penix played against the blitz in a small sample last year, I mean, he was 31st in completion rate against the blitz, 24th in yards per pass attempts. So maybe this offense just in totality isn't that good. And then these offensive line changes are a pretty big deal for Bijan Robinson. I had the splits with Drew Dahlman initially in kind of the offseason articles, because he had left in free agency, and talked about, how on 177 runs with Dahlman on the field last year, Bijan had a 52.5% success rate and ran for a first down or touchdown in 32% of his runs. He had 127 attempts last year with Dahlman off the field. His success rate dropped down to 44.9%, and a first down or touchdown down to 20.5% of those runs, which is a big deal. Then McGarry got hurt, and I had to add those splits to the tiers, and we had to kind of go over that stuff. And they were such a big predominant outside zone running team under Zach Robinson. I mean, Bijan Robinson had 61 more outside zone rushes attempts than the next closest running back. And almost all of those were to the outside. They ran 150 times to the outside, to the right side, McGrary side. And Falcons running backs averaged 5.6 yards per carry with a 57% success rate. Bijan had 96 of those runs, 5.3 yards per carry. But this team struggled to run the ball to the middle of the field, especially when Domino's out, and struggled to run the ball to the left side. And then also, and just even if they were going to have McGrary, this is a pretty bad matchup because no team was as good as the Buccaneers last year at defending those outside runs, right? They were 10th in yards per carry allowed to running backs and outside zone runs, 8th in success rate. The Falcons struggled to run the ball in both games against the Bucs last year. So all of those kind of moving parts really kind of put like a fly in the ointment, I think, for Bijan from like a ceiling week perspective. Like I said, value and receiving work can all get there. Touchdown equity can still get there. But this would be a week where I would be kind of hesitant to pay top dollar for him in DFS.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. But I also think, like the point you brought up, this could be also a longer term concern. We'll have to see what happens. You said, this isn't a good matchup. I am actually interested in that Bucs defense, to your point. Didn't Villa miss practice on Wednesday, which is
that doesn't matter because they faced 112 running back runs with Vita Vea off the field last year, and they were still second in the NFL in yards per carry allowed.
So they're going to be good. They're going to be good for sure. But I do the point about blitzing I did think was interesting because I read that in the worksheet. I read all the worksheets, and it is interesting because Yaya Diaby, I think, is a good player. They bring in Hassan Reddick. I do wonder, we know what Todd Bowles wants to do, but that defense has been very interesting to me. And getting to watch them in this matchup and what they decide to do is something I'm certainly going to be interested in. But your splits with McGarry and you're bringing up all of that. And I actually, when I dug into those splits, I thought that maybe a lot of those off-field kind of splits came not last season, but the season before when Robinson, was a rookie and wasn't as good. But even last year, it was bad with McGarry off the field as well. It wasn't a ton of plays. Like we're operating with small samples. I think it's 64 career carries with McGarry off the field. So we're operating on very small samples. But yeah, from moving forward, even not just this week, not just this game, that's not a great matchup. There are concerns. We would like to see them, I think, really come out strong with Robinson. But if Robinson comes out strong in this matchup, then obviously it's, we're feeling a lot better.
They're going to be starting Elijah Wilkinson at right tackle, who's kind of bounced around in terms of where he's played in that organization across the line. Because again, it's not even just that, it's Storm Norton. If you're counting on Storm Norton too, and then Storm Norton being out, it's like, yeah, you're like bummed about that. It's like that gives you kind of context of like, oh yeah, we could be down real bad here on the right side.
Is this a false memory? But I'm pretty sure Storm Norton is the right tackle that Chargers hate, right?
Yes,
that's the one. Okay, the Chargers fans just you might have put them into some PTSD by just bringing up his name so many times. All right, next up, in agree or disagree, James Conner will break the Week 1 DFS slate.
This one is, unfortunately, I will have to disagree with this one as well in context of the game, but with a caveat that James Conner's in a great match, he's a great play. But in terms of breaking the slate, it's probably thinner. We actually probably are pretty grateful he's going to be tracking to be this popular because he only had 225-point games last year. This is not a guy, he still needs multiple touchdowns to kind of have a really positive game. And then the odds of him having a 30-point game are pretty relatively thin. He has 4 of those in his career. So in terms of breaking the slate at his potential ownership, he's tracking to be top 5 at both sites. I would say disagree. He has context of breaking. So I think he's a really good cash game play. I think he's in a really great spot as a core play. When you look at their 6.5-point favorites, the Cardinals, when they had the lead last year, they had the 7th highest run rate. James Conner, the 2nd highest success rate running the ball at the lead. In wins, he was 7th in rushing yards per game. In losses, he dropped to 17th in rushing yards per game. And then the individual matchup is just tremendous against the potential of what the Saints put out in the field last year. Granted, none of this may mean a damn thing when we get to it, but James Conner is 5th in the league in inside zone runs, yards per carry. The Saints allowed the highest rate of yards per carry to running backs and inside zone runs. They also were 26th in the league in touchdown rate allowed to running backs. They were 31st in success rate. This all is a big signal for James Conner to be a really strong play, come out of the blocks. I like his yardage prop too a lot because I said in wins, he averaged 87.5 yards per game. His rushing prop right now is 68.5 in most places. So I like that. But in terms of context of breaking the slate, this is where it's the nuance of DFS kind of comes into play. And while he's a really good play in large field tournaments, he actually opens the advantage of maybe you don't want this much access to a player of him that is tracking for to be a 20% owned player, because none of the Cardinals passing game is tracking for really any ownership. Kyler and Marvin Harrison sub 5%. And even though we only know there are 3 good tight ends in the NFL, Trey McBride is tracking for single digit ownership this week as well, because of the way the week 1 salaries have played out. And he's an expensive tight end. And people are doing a lot of salary saving elsewhere because there's just a lot of kind of free squares where the pricing was set. Thanks for pricing Emeka Egbuka where he was, both sites. But so in context of breaking the slate, it's a disagree. But I think James Conner's a tremendous play. He's going to be in my core for cash games. And I think he's a really sound bet for some of his player prop stuff. But he's not going to, you need multiple touchdowns for him in tournament setting. And he's not going to really kill you in the passing game either. So I do think he provides some leverage if you do want to play some of the Cardinals passing pieces.
Yeah, it's just like a question of, are we actually going to get push, right? Like the Saints last year were so bad with Rattler on the field on offense. Could he get better? Absolutely, right? Could Kellen Moore, make the offense work? Sure. Like, this is the thing about week 1. We don't actually know. We have what we think about the Saints offense. We have what we think based on what we saw from Rattler last year, which again was awful. They averaged 4.6 yards per play and 5.8 yards per pass attempt. There were 38 quarterbacks who had 225 attempts last season. Rattler was dead last in touchdown rate and 30th in sacks per pressure. So we're talking bad. That's how bad we are. And if you don't get that push, do we see more Benson? We saw that scuttlebutt, in the off season as well. So yeah, we need that push from the other side. But what I really would love to see happen is the Saints just win this game, ruin every survivor pool that exists, and then we come back again in week 1. That'd be fun if the Saints for 2 years in a row were just like the week 1 talking point. If we came back and Spencer Rattler threw for 300, it would be a good time. I don't think that's going to happen. Cardinals defense a lot better this year, I think. So we'll see where we go. Finally, last agree or disagree here. Joe Flacco will win people, and by people I most notably mean me, money this weekend.
Yeah, I think I would lean towards the agree side on this. I think there's just a lot of potential outcomes here. Like, really, the only way this kind of game kind of lets down is that you almost wish Flacco was playing a good defense instead of maybe a bad defense. Because you do want, like, Flacco's one of those guys you want him to create the game environment. Like, when you look at his last stint with the Browns, or even a little bit with the Colts, with the Browns, he threw an interception in every game, right? Like, and he faced some good defenses in the context of that year that he created some really kind of jailbreak game environments where we had a lot of fun. Maybe the Bengals are just that bad of a defense that, like, the Browns are able to just kind of like meander their way through on offense, right? We want that early Flacco pick 6, like a turnover. But I do think that the Bengals offense, even though the Browns and Jim Schwartz have had success against the Bengals and have not allowed a lot of ceiling spike weeks too, particularly like Chase and Burrow, this Bengals defense, like, they have the vibe of, like, they understand the assignment this year, I think, a little bit more. Zach Taylor, they're 1-5 in week 1 games with him. I think they really are putting emphasis on starting the year hotter because they know that these games that they're favored in, like, they can't squander these games like last year. Like, last year they missed being a bubble playoff team because they lost a bunch of early games that they shouldn't have. They opened with Browns and Jaguars, like 2 games they're going to be favored. They played this first string offense significantly more in the preseason than we've seen them play. Joe Burrow, and I know it's not like a huge sample, but he took 25 dropbacks this preseason. For his career, he had 8 dropbacks in the preseason. Like, they're trying to hit the ground running a little bit. Even though this Browns defense, I believe, is good and it was put in just really heinous spots last year, this is still an offense, the Bengals offense, that could still produce and score points, and it's going to run through Joe Burrow. So if the Bengals are scoring points here and pushing the Browns, we know that Flacco is a player that can give you like that usable QB2 plus. You're not getting any rushing out of him, but he is a guy that I think can get you, at where he's priced 4.9 on DraftKings. And then on FanDuel, I had it loose on my head and I lost it where he had, but he's around like 5.6 or something there too. So he could definitely a guy that can get you like usable points. He's a QB2 streamer, and he's also not tracking to be like immensely popular this week in early stuff. We'll see if that transitions during the week, but there's just so many other plays this week on the board that, Flacco's kind of getting a little buried. So potentially good in game environment. So I would tend to agree. I think that you also start him in 2 QB leagues, all those other things.
Yeah, absolutely. You're starting him in 2 quarterback. I mean, the thing about week 1 is that you probably are just playing the guys you drafted. But if you wanted to play him ahead of somebody, like that's certainly something that I could be interested in as well.
I
And
had like a 2 QB with like Michael Penix, so I took some shots on guys, and like I just picked up Flacco to play him.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have a best ball style league, but where we also have transactions, and roster transactions been running for a long time that we've been doing this. And Flacco was just available, and I have like Darnold and May and other people in that league. And I'm like, yeah, why not? Like he very, very easily could outscore Drake May this week, even though we like Drake May long term, right? He very easily could outscore Drake May this week. And so I was happy to pick him up there. I came back to this a lot during the offseason that I think we just have too negative a view on this Browns offense. I pushed for us to take the over on this game when it was 45.5. Now it's up to 47.5, right? So I'm not pushing anymore, but like, I just think it's going to be a good game. I think we're too low on the Browns offense because of what we saw with Deshaun Watson and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And again, I'll just say it again, over the last 3 seasons, the Browns averaged 4.6 yards per play with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, 5.1 yards per play with any other quarterback. And that includes Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and then 5.6 yards per play with Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston at quarterback. And that's over 818 plays. Like that's a relatively large sample as NFL goes. I think this offense is underrated. In fact, as we get to Uncut Gems at the end here, I might have another Brown to throw out for you as well. So I guess stay tuned for that. All right, let's move on and talk about a few of the games. Again, Rich previews these games every single week over at Sharp Football Analysis, every fantasy relevant player in every single game. Make sure you go and check that out. If we don't talk about a game you're interested in, or if we don't go far enough talking about the Ravens or Bills, I guarantee you Rich has written about what you're interested in those games. Go and check it out at Sharp Football Analysis. Remember, we got some good promos running right now. Take 25 for 25% off site-wide. That includes the fantasy season-long package, monthly packages, and then you could also use promo code WEEK1, that's WEEKONE, spelling out 1, for 77% off any weekly package. So all of that is available at Sharp Football Analysis. And I think if we're talking about game previews, we have to get started with the big one, the Mac Daddy of them all, and that is the Ravens at the Bills on Sunday Night Football. We've been blessed with this Week 1 Sunday night game. The Bills are 1.5 point favorites. It's a 50.5 point total. This game is interesting because of a lot of things that, even going back to the book that we talked about, obviously these teams have met in the playoffs, right? There's a lot of interesting storylines in this game, Rich.
Yeah, and the Ravens have some moving parts on the injury end. They add, a lot of players. This was a defense that gelled as the back half of the season went on last year. They had Jair Alexander. They draft Malachi Starks. The Bills lost a little bit of defensive players because Josh Allen's salary contract finally kicked in. So like they've had to adjust some pieces. They do bring in, Joey Bosa. They also have some potential injuries. Earlier in the week, we record this on Thursday morning, so we only have the Wednesday injury reports, which largely are they're not irrelevant, but like, during the course of the season, Wednesday practices definitely don't mean as much. You see a lot of guys miss Wednesday practices, but we saw Christian Benford not practice. It looks like Tre'Davious White, who the Bills brought back, may be out for this game. So they've got just a number of moving parts too on the back end. Really what it comes down to this game is just kind of, stylistically, like these two teams played two different matchups last year, and Sean McDermott made the proper adjustments in the rematch. And the Ravens did not. And that was kind of like why one team moved on outside of Mark Andrews, but yeah, there are some moving parts here. It is interesting that we're starting, with this game at the front. Maybe this is a game, like we're talking to producer Adam before the show, like maybe this is a game with it being in Week 1, like we kind of go back to, and it's like, that was the difference between a playoff, seeding for these two teams. So it is a really big game in the context of the AFC.
I actually, speaking of producer Adam, he's corrected me that Baltimore has moved to 1.5 point favorite, which must be pretty recent over at least at DraftKings Sportsbook. So I'm not sure if we missed some news as we were recording, but if there has news, again, we record on Thursday morning, and so we'll see. You brought up the injury report. Both Bills corners being on the injury report is certainly a concern. But I do want you to lean more into like the changes that McDermott made with blitzing Lamar Jackson, because Warren Sharp actually posted on the site, again, sharpfootballanalysis.com, great site, go and check it out, posted about kind of what the Bills were able to do, and the fact that the Ravens have, at least Todd Monken has talked this offseason about finding ways to adjust to that. So will the Bills try to do it again? even though, it's a regular season game? Do they want to show their cards? Do the Ravens want to show their cards in week 1 about what they plan to do against the man blitz? So do you have like just some stats here about Jackson, kind of how he's done?
Yeah, and the availability of the who the Bills have in the back end might play into this, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
If they are not able to have these two cornerbacks that they're counting on being two of their top 3 cornerbacks available, they might not be able to play as aggressively as they did in that, that playoff game. And they might have to revert to playing more zone coverage to insulate their backups, because in the first matchup they played really passive defense, and anyone that played passive defense against the Ravens were just like inviting themselves to get shredded. In the first matchup, they only blitzed Lamar Jackson on 25 of snaps. It was his 4th lowest rate in a game that season. The Bills only played man coverage on 16% of those snaps. They were in cover 4 quarters 42% of the time. Jackson saw cover 4 a higher rate just one other game. And last year, against zone, against non-blitzes, like Lamar just absolutely feasted. No quarterback had a higher rating against zone coverage last year. No quarterback had a better rating against quarters than him last year. He completed a league high for 10 yards per pass attempt, 73% completion rate against zone coverages without a blitz. He also threw 20 touchdowns on those. It just absolutely shredded. But against man blitzes, 6.5 yards per attempt, Lamar went to 26th in the league. And this was during the best season of his career. And when the Bills played them in the playoffs, he switched. They played man coverage on 42% of their snaps. That was their highest rate of game that last year. They blitzed them on 38.7% of his dropbacks. That was their second highest blitz rate in a game. Drake May was the only guy that they blitzed at a high rate. And against those man blitzes in that playoff game, Lamar went 3 of 9, 2.4 yards per pass attempt and an interception. But when the Bills still played that passive approach, when they didn't blitz and played zone coverage in that playoff game, Lamar was 10 of 10 for 122 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's a big deal. Those quarterback injuries are going to be a big deal. And it's also funny because, like, stylistically, McDermott might want to bring that pressure again, but he might not be able to because of who's available. And inversely, if the Ravens, we know they're not going to have Isaiah Likely for this game, and if they don't have Patrick Ricard available, then they might not be able to do what they want to do against the Bills when they go to these these passive sets, because one of the big thing that the Bills have always done under McDermott is they want to play like that soft sub package, that nickel based defense. Even last year, no one had more snaps last year with 5 or more defensive backs in the field than the Bills. You go back to the first matchup when these teams, like when the Ravens absolutely just whopped them, like it was a 41-7 game, and they just went heavy the whole game and just ran down their throats when the Bills tried to play sub package. And if you don't have Isaiah Likely, that already reduces your 2 tight end sets. If you don't have Patrick Ricard, that reduces your ability to have your fullback on the field. When Ricard was on the field last year, Derrick Henry ran 33 times for 252 yards against the Bills, 7.6 yards per carry, had a first down or touchdown on 36.5% of those runs. But a small sample with Ricard off, 7 carries, 31 yards, only a 14.3% rate of first down touchdown rate. Like, it's a big deal systemically, like how both these teams want to operate based on, who they have available in this opening game, because the Ravens might have to play more 3 wide receiver sets than they've been used to. And they do have DeAndre Hopkins on as a answer to that. But, we saw him last year. The Chiefs not really take off. And then inversely, the Bills might want to play a little more aggressive man, but just not be able to if those cornerbacks are down.
One more thing I'm interested in this game is the receiver usage, because we saw, even when like Keon Coleman was healthy and part of the offense, we saw them rotate receivers so much. That's one of our big things with Khalil Shakir, is that he gets targets when he's on the field, but he doesn't play a ton of targets because he doesn't play in 2 wide receiver sets, right? Like, we have all of these questions. They bring in Josh Palmer now. I kind of think, and I've been operating under the assumption, we are going to see a more consistent receiver rotation. We're going to see Coleman play more than around 70%. He ran around, I think, around 70% of the dropbacks, even when healthy last year. We're going to see him get in more into the 80%. I think we're going to see Palmer do that as well. Maybe not for Shakir, but that's going to be one of the things I'm watching here, is how we're rotating out these receivers. Can we get a true top 3? They did sign Gabe Davis to the practice squad, but it looks like he's just going to go on injured reserve as he still recovers from an injury. So we're not worried about that in the season. Because if we do, and if we get Keon Coleman running a route on 90% of the dropbacks, and we get Josh Palmer in that range as well, then that really could be great for them, even in this offense, even as the Bills under Joe Brady have not been super pass heavy. If we could just get those consistency of routes, especially out of Coleman, then we could have been way too low on him in fantasy drafts. So I'll be watching that for sure, how the wide receiver kind of rotation works in Buffalo in this game.
Yeah, no doubt. And this was, I mean, the Ravens gave this passing game fits in both matchups, and this wasn't even a really good pass defense the first time these teams played, and they were better when they played in the playoff game. But Josh Allen in both games, 6.2, 5.8 yards per pass attempt in both those games. They also held him to 20 and 21 yards rushing in those games. So Ravens had a really good defensive game plan in both games. They kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit in that playoff game with some turnovers and then not been able to adjust, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup, but I think that based on if we come in and Ricard doesn't play and Benford's out, like these teams are going to look differently stylistically than they both show in week one moving forward when they get those guys back on the field.
Yeah, and you mentioned, like, could this Josh Allen be one of those? Oh no, we're disappointed in Josh Allen. I guess we have a long enough track record of Josh Allen. We're not worried about that.
All right, quarterbacks in general, yeah. I mean, even the quarterback, the early run out for quarterbacks is not like prestige, right? Like Allen and Lamar have these games where it's like they might not be super ceiling weeks, but they could be. They're that type of player. You've got Burrow against the Browns. His track record's not good against them. And you got Jaden Daniels against this revamped Giants defense. And he was just kind of okay in both Giants games last year already. So it's one of those interesting, kind of layouts in week one where it's already weird, where the rankings don't always match up ADP. And that's always the fun thing about week one, right? Was when the rankings are like, oh yeah, it's not where we had ADP.
Yeah, no, that old like start your studs thing. I mean, it's true. You're starting Josh Allen, right? But if you're talking about like the RB15, you could maybe, right? Like there may be some Tony Pollard. We could definitely be starting some folks over that you drafted behind Tony Pollard over Tony Pollard this week, and so that's kind of where we are. So always, keep that in mind. Don't stick to who you drafted first. There might be some other options out there. All right, let's move on to talk about the Lions at Packers. Packers -2.5, totals 46.5, 47.5, depends on where you look. Again, we record this on Thursday morning. We haven't seen the practice report. Jaden Reed do not practice on Wednesday. That seems very noteworthy as we're moving forward, especially since I've drafted all offseason. Like every draft I did, I drafted under the premise that the Packers were going to be more pass heavy than they were last year with Jordan Love healthy. And I think if you go and look at the evidence of last year, when Jordan Love was as healthy as he was at any point last season, obviously suffered the knee injury in week one, that they were a more pass heavy team. And a lot of what happened and the way they transition had to do with, his injury. So I've been operating under that assumption. But I mean, if Watson is out, if now Jaden Reed, we'll see what happens with him. He's definitely not 100%, even if he plays this week. I'm interested in how they attack this Lions defense. But again, if you're attacking this Lions defense, like you probably don't want to run right into the teeth of it. So this is going to be an interesting matchup for sure.
This is a tough one because, I looked at this game for like a DFS perspective and not a lot of individual pieces were popping for like core and GPP plays. I'll definitely make a single entry game stack around this game, but that's kind of where it falls because there's just a lot of moving parts of trying to diagnose like what we really have here in this game. Could it be potentially lower scoring too? The total has come down a little bit since the open. The Lions just have, a ton of moving parts with the coaching changes, right? Like you lose both coordinators. You go from Ben Johnson to John Morton. You go from Aaron Glenn to Kelvin Shepard. Neither one of these guys have really any experience in their roles. The Lions also have two, you're changing out two offensive linemen. They're getting healthier defense. Because remember, the Lions defense, the front half of last year was dominant. And then they started to pick up a bunch of injuries. And where we closed the season, they were just not nearly as good as a defense to close the year. Now they're getting, DJ Reader back. They're getting Aiden Hutchinson back. They add DJ Reed who could be a potential upgrade on, Carlton Davis. They're getting Alex Anzalone back, who was in and out of the line at the back half of the year. They used a first-round pick on Talik Williams. So it looks like on paper, it looks like a very formidable defense. We'll see how aggressive they are going from Glenn to Shepard because Glenn was a really hyper-aggressive defensive-minded head coach. We don't really know what Shepard's going to bring to the table. And the same thing from Ben Johnson to John Morton. So you have all these pieces. And the Packers are a team, too, on paper. They look like they upgraded. Obviously, they made the huge trade for Micah Parsons. You don't love that the player that you sent all that equity for might have to get an epidural before they get ready for the game. But if he's able to be in a pass rushing capacity, when the Packers did get pressure on Jared Goff last year, they had a ton of success. So it's really one of those games that you just try to feel out the individual pieces. Like, you're still playing Amon-Ra, you're still playing Gibbs, you're plugging in Josh Jacobs, even though it's not a great matchup. And then the rest of the pieces, it's kind of harder to diagnose what we have, because if the Lions are aggressive and the secondary is better, like that was the biggest red flag of Matthew Golden's, production profiles. This dude could not beat man coverage. He couldn't beat press coverage. He had that very Xavier Worthy-ish profile. He was super fast, but if you put hands on him, it was a problem. He was one of the worst wide receivers in this draft class in terms of, success against man coverage in college. And if Shepard rolls over this kind of Aaron Glenn type approach, that could be a problem even for him, because I know he's going to be kind of a semi-popular DFS play this week, but if those are problems for his game as his first NFL start, like could be a matchup that could really hinder his performance. So it is one of these games that just have a really tough time feeling out. I'm definitely excited to watch it. Definitely excited to still bet Jahmyr Gibbs longest rush. But I do have a tough time like finding like clear-cut objective paths for like ceiling outcomes from a lot of the individual pieces.
Yeah, I'm falling there as well. Like I was there was no bigger fan of Jordan Love in fantasy drafts this summer than me. Like I would hesitate. I don't think you could find one, but I'm not super excited about playing him this week in DFS, even though, like we said, the game total is relatively high. It has been coming down. It's still high, with the second or third highest on Sunday, right? Like it's a high game total, but yeah, it's just, there are lots of things that could kind of go off the rails in this game. You mentioned the backfield, you mentioned Gibbs. What are they going to do with David Montgomery? What does that look like under the new coaching staff? Like, it's just, we don't know. What does he look like behind the new offensive line? There's so many questions with this game that we just don't know. And I hope, like, for my pocketbook, I'm very hopeful that Matthew Golden comes out and is really good in week one. That would be useful. But also, as I wrote in the waiver column, Romeo Doubs is inevitable. He is the Thanos of the Packers wide receiver core. So we'll see where we get with that. One more game to go through this week, and that is, and again, all of these games have been written up by Rich at sharpfootballanalysis.com, part of the worksheet. Go and check it out. One more game, and this is one we've been talking about all week that I don't know if the public really cares, but we oddly have had a lot of conversations about the Panthers at the Jaguars. The Jaguars -3.5, 46.5 point total. Why? Like, why are we talking about this game, Rich? Why are we so interested? I agree with you, but I just need you to explain it to the people. Why we're so interested in this game.
I lowered a little bit of expectations just based on some of the stuff that happened with Carolina throughout the week. Sure. Obviously, they trade Thielen, Coker gets injured, and then Ekemekwonou has the appendectomy, and it does. Even if he is able to play in short turnaround, like, he's going to definitely be down some core strength, and that's like not really what you want your left tackle to be hurting. So even if he does,
you're saying core strength's important for a left. I'm going to write that down and take that down.
Yeah, exactly. So it does lower a little bit for like the pushback side, because I was ready to kind of maybe play this from both sides for DFS, but now I'm kind of leaning towards where I want to play it more aggressively through the Jacksonville side and then still play Tet McMillan. But these were two like historically bad defenses last year that didn't make like really wholesale changes. I think that Carolina made more changes up front to get excited about than Jacksonville made changes altogether. But that's just kind of defending the run, really, like against the pass, because they were a historically bad defense and they kept, the same defensive coordinator, Giro, like they kept him. Like, they brought him back. They're like, it was cool. It was cool what happened last year. Like, let's bring that back. And then the back end, they really only added Trevin Moehrig. So the secondary still looks very suspect. We're waiting to see this proof of concept from Liam Cohen, but a lot of gamers might be waiting to see it, right? Like, a lot of gamers might be like, I'm not going to fall for the Lucy at the football at Trevor Lawrence again. Like, they need to show me something. But if you are on board with the Jaguars, like, these 2 weeks are where you get in and then you get off. Like, Panthers, Bengals to open the year, and then they go to hell for like 5 or 6 weeks in a row, like against the opponents. It might not be like the complete Saints run out versus last year where we're getting 40 and 50 point games from these teams, but I do think they're going to be the most effective to open this year in these matchups. We did see in the preseason Liam Cohen getting the ball out of Trevor Lawrence's hands. He was very efficient. We saw that translate to Brian Robinson Jr. playing more in the slot, getting a lot of quick hitters. I think it's just a tremendous matchup. And even if Trevor Lawrence, they were going to keep everything safe, like, his one good thing last year was he torched cover 3, which is what really all the Panthers ran last year. So you kind of have that going for you as well. So I just look at this game, and this is the one where I got kind of a little bit excited for a DFS perspective, because it could be two bad defenses, and we have a lot of cheap pieces in the game outside of Brian Thomas Jr., who's like really the only expensive piece because Tet McMillan is very cheap on both sites. And the target share that Tet McMillan's going to run into to open this year, it just looks like he's got a free runway to have a 25% plus target share right away.
Yeah, I haven't looked at ownership yet this week. I normally, that's something I do on a Friday, but I have to assume that McMillan's going to be very popular, and I don't care. Like, just put him in every lineup. I don't care. I'm all in on McMillan and that passing attack against this team. And then, like you said, if I can get a Lawrence stack on the other end with Lawrence and Thomas, and then Strange, play Hunter, try to play up on how scared, worried people are about either Hunter's injury or how much he's going to play on offense. Yeah, there's a lot in this game that I like. The thing we don't like about this game, I guess, is the Jaguars backfield, but I think you're in on even on Travis Etienne this week. Like, you're going whole hog on the Jaguars. You're ready to go.
I was ready. I think by the time we get to Saturday, I think he's just going to get squeezed out of my pool. Like, I kind of when I write these guys up, I want to think about, it's like, yes, he does. Cause I do think he don't have a 0 Travis Etienne. Or even if you wanted to get cute with Tank Bigsby, but you know what you need with Tank Bigsby. Like, he's got to have some tuds. He's got to have some tuds. And we did see the small sample that Trevor Lawrence played this preseason. He played 19 snaps, and it was a clear favorite for Travis Etienne on those snaps. And we did see kind of the way Liam Cohen utilized that backfield last year. Could he just be kind of like never get the efficiency back, but still be like Rashad White-ish? That could be a potential outcome for Travis Etienne as well. But Etienne played 19. He was not 19 Lawrence snaps. He played a 19 of Lawrence's snaps, where Bigsby played 9. And I imagine Bigsby's going to be like when he comes in the game, what's going on. Like, he's getting those early down runs. It's going to be clear running situations where he gets on the field. Will we see Tootin at all? Remains to be seen. Even if you don't see Tootin, I don't think you panic. It's, you kind of know, like, you didn't pick up Tootin to play him in week 1 anyways, or at least I hope you didn't. See that. Like I said, I look at these rookie running backs, and I kind of see the landscape, even for JT, and there's like a path to disappointment for all those guys.
Yeah, the week 2 overreactions will be fun. I'm waiting for the Bill Krosky Merritt one, because that's one that you've been on, and thanks to you, I was on. In fact, I have him in the Scott Fish Bowl, and so we've been on him for a while. We were drafting him when he was in the 18th and 20th round, and people had drafted him in like the 8th and 9th. That's going to be a really fun to see what happens here. Although I think he's going to get enough carries. I think he'll be fine. But Chris Rodriguez gets 2 touchdowns. That's going to be, all of those types of outcomes are just what I live for in week 1, and see what
I made
happens.
a joke to Sigmund Bloom earlier today, because we were talking about just the potential, because Hampton's had kind of all the pulling threads kind of pulling him. Najee's able to come back. Rashawn Slater's out. The matchup's not good. I was like, what if we just made a rug pull rookie touchdown parlay, where it's Ramondre to score a touchdown, J.K. Dobbins to score a touchdown? Yes. It's just like, you just do that.
I'm in. you tell me who to Venmo for this, because we will pool our money together. It's gonna be wonderful.
Yeah,
all
Chris
right.
Rodriguez, or Eckler.
Or Jeremy McNichols. Go the whole way with that one. That's what we're looking for. All right, like I said, every game, Rich wrote up every game. It's available on the website, sharpfootballanalysis.com. Again, make sure you go and check that out as part of our fantasy package. Let's finish this up as we always do. Let's bring it home with Uncut Gems. You hopefully don't need to dig this deep in week 1. I hope that your roster's in good shape heading into week 1, but these are players who are available in a lot of leagues or on benches and deeper formats that we think can overperform expectation this week, perhaps deliver a startable score. That's what Uncut Gems is. That's who we're looking for. Who do you got this week, Rich?
Yeah, I didn't mention him in that game that we talked about for a reason, because I was saving him for here, and not to pander to you with the Penn State player right away. But I've got Brenton Strange here.
Let's do it. Let's go.
We have the full runway now with Evan Ingram, gone off the roster. We did get to see a small sample of him last year, and he was okay-ish, but we did see in the limited sample this preseason, he was on the field for just under 70% of Trevor Lawrence's dropbacks, caught all 3 of his targets for 33 yards, and he's coming in this game environment that we like. We like the passing game more than the rushing, ambiguity of the backfield, and he's got a matchup here, which could be nothing since last year's stuff, but Carolina was a target for us weekly for tight end production. They were 28th in yards per target, the highest touchdown rate to tight ends in the NFL to tight ends. ends, that could all be moot, but it's just kind of just another thing I want to add to emphasize and just help my point here. But I already did bet his receiving yards, which were real low. For a fantasy stance, I'm going to give you some names I would actually start Brenton Strange over. I would start him over his former teammate, Evan Ingram, this week, if I had the choice. I would start him over Jake Ferguson. I would start him over Hunter Henry. I would start him over Dalton Kincaid. And that's probably about it. Maybe Dallas Goedert, but probably not. But I think I have him tight end 11 is what I'm saying this week. I have him as a starting tight end. So go ahead and check out the ranks of the site.
I would start him over Dallas Goedert. I want that to be. Okay. I want that to be clear. I would start him over Dallas Goedert. But no, your point about that, like he was going T18 or something like that.
Yes.
which was
Colston Loveland is another guy. Like he was drafted behind, but I would play him over Colston Loveland week 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm there with you on him. For sure. My guy, I kind of referenced this at the top, is Cedric Tillman. We already talked about Joe Flacco and the Browns offense and the situation that they're in. Obviously, the matchup is good. But I do want to make a point about Tillman. From week 7, after Amari Cooper was traded, to week 12, when Tillman got hurt last year, he actually led the team in target share. He was third. He was targeted on a third of Cleveland's throws into the end zone over that time period. And that was with David Njoku and Jerry Jeudy healthy. They were around for those games. Obviously, very small sample, but they were around for those games. Other than Jeudy and Njoku, you're not really worried about any other pass catcher on this roster. I think he's going to have a pretty nice open. I think he's going to be potentially a guy a lot of people are looking for on the wire. Next week, he's available in 60% or so of ESPN leagues. He's not available in any of my leagues. So before you get on me, not in my league, D-Gens, he's not available in any of my leagues either. But he is available in around 60%. So I think if he's out there on your bench, in fact, I'm starting him in a few leagues this week for sure. I'm in on Tillman this week. I'm in on the Browns passing game. I can't wait for how much money I lose on him at DraftKings this week. But that's just the deal. That's just the deal. We get excited in week 1, Rich. Football's here. We're allowed to be excited. We're allowed to chase our dudes and just hope for the best. I can't believe you got a Penn State guy in and I didn't get a Penn State guy in. This is a travesty. Parker Washington. Is Parker Washington going to play snaps? Like we got Tyler Warren.
Hey, maybe Friday night KLS will score a touchdown.
Yes, we still love you, KLS. I know you spent that year at Auburn. It doesn't count. We still love you, KLS. Come back.
I mean, this is the year for Penn State, right? Like, I don't want to put too much pressure on your fandom or turn us into college football talk, but on our way out here, like, it's got to be it. Like, they got to cash this in, right? Like, this is one they got to cash in this year.
Oh yeah, but we're not. Like, it's still James Franklin.
You're such a fan. Such a fan, like, just waiting for the.
What are you talking about? Oh no, it's that I can't wait for they lose at home to Oregon in 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever it is, and the collapse. They steal Ohio State's defensive coordinator because what Oregon did to us last year in the Big Ten championship game was just a nightmare. They steal Ohio State's defensive coordinator, and then Ohio State brings in Matt Patricia of all people, and he comes in and completely shuts down the chosen one, Arch Manning, in week 1. So that's how it goes. That's life as a Penn State fan. Whatever. We'll go 10-2. We'll lose to Ohio State and Oregon. We'll still make the playoff. Life will move on. Drew Allen will be a first-round pick. It'll be fine. I accept my team for who they are, right? I meet my team where they are. And James Franklin lives at 10-2 in disappointment. And I meet you there, James Franklin. And I appreciate your service to my mental health. That's it for us. Week 1 is here. We're excited about it. We're excited to watch it. Make sure that you stick around at the YouTube channel. Subscribe. If you're listening to this podcast, subscribe there. A lot of stuff coming available on the channel every single week as we move through the fantasy season. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you get notifications. There's just be a lot of content from Warren Sharp, from Rich, from Ryan McChrystal, from Joe Gibbs, a lot available. So check that out. Also, remember to head over to the website, sharpfootballanalysis.com or sharp.football. Use the promo code TAKE25 for 25% off everything site-wide. Use the promo code WEEK1, that's WEEKONE, 1 spelled out, for 77% off any weekly package. If you just want to try it out for a week, get 77% off the weekly package. Make sure you check that out. Again, everything's available on the site, rankings, worksheet previews. Read it. It's week 1. Get excited. We'll be back to talk with you next week.